The legacy media seems to be collapsing right and left, especially left out there following Donald Trump's election. And of course, here we've got this story where ABC had to pay Donald Trump that $15 million in a lawsuit settlement, plus another $1 million to pay off his legal fees. And now we see things like George Stephanopoulos just leaving Twitter altogether and maybe leaving ABC. Because, of course, well, a lot of the staffers at ABC were none too happy with Disney's decision to do this, and it is just glorious. Renegade Online. So we all saw the story before regarding the Donald Trump lawsuit. So I want to kick over to this real quick. Apparently, I got to find the Variety article. George Stephanopoulos was none too happy with the fact that Disney settled the lawsuit with Donald Trump. Obviously, he feels like he should have been defended. He feels like that Disney rolled him over. Disney doesn't care about the news organizations and all. Look, let me tell you what. And I think I told this story before in the not too distant past. I remember Limbaugh telling a story 20 years ago, maybe 30 now, I have no idea, about how I think it was CBS News and Dan Rather was still there before he was disgracefully retired because of his fraud and he forged a bunch of evidence against then President George W. Bush. But there were cuts that were going to be made in one of the major three networks newsrooms, and they were pissed. How can you cut our budgets? How can you do this? We are the news. We are the most prestigious thing. I mean, they thought they were kings and princes and all this kind of stuff. And because they ran the nightly news, that they were just above it all. It's the typical narcissistic arrogance. They thought they were worth way more than what they were. And we had to be the highest paid people on the network, even though we were losing money every night. Stephanopoulos comes from that ilk. George Stephanopoulos comes from the Clinton administration. He comes from that same era of holier-than-thou, just asshat, right? Media asshat. And he was the typical type that is, of course, as soon as he left the White House, as soon as he got out, as soon as Clinton, pieced out after his second term, Stephanopoulos had guaranteed multi-million-dollar annual contracts to be on major news networks. And he went to ABC because, and this is how long ago it was, this was not that many years removed from when Disney bought ABC. This might have been 6 years after Disney actually bought and fully acquired and finished the merger of ABC, which included ESPN. So Stephanopoulos came in, not long after, basically, Bob Iger came in at Disney. This is how far back he goes. He is now saying that, according to a Variety article here that was posted up by Eric Daughtry from Florida, report after ABC was forced to pay Donald Trump $15 million for a defamatory statement that was made by Stephanopoulos. Prime, or ABC Prime host, I guess, George Stephanopoulos may leave the network in 2025, as per reporting by Variety magazine. He is reportedly very unhappy with the network's apology and settlement with Trump. God, I'm so sorry, George. Nothing of value will be lost. Sorry, nothing of value. Think of ABC and Disney right now. They are everything. If there is a pinnacle of national broadcast journalism that is the worst of the worst when it comes to bias and stupidity, and by that I mean traditional over-the-air broadcast, the big three, right? Take CNN and take MSNBC off the table for a minute. They are linear broadcast, yes, but they are cable. They're only cable. I'm talking about traditional OG news networks. ABC is probably about the worst. When you factor in guys like their nightly news, the Good Morning America stuff, George Stephanopoulos, and of course, The View. The View. Ugh. Whoopi Goldberg and Sonny Halston. Yes. They have an absolutely terrible cast. Disney cast members. No, they have a terrible cast. They are a terrible group of people that are heavily biased. They are so far detached and removed from anything that is America, anything that is middle America, anything that is actually functional in terms of being able to tell the truth and get a beat on the cultural zeitgeist, get a beat on actual politics, get a beat on what actual polling data is, because God knows all their polling data was whacked out leading up to the presidential election about a month and a half ago. Yeah. Is anybody going to actually really give a damn if Stephanopoulos leaves? Honestly, most of America, A, won't even notice, and B, won't even remember who the hell George Stephanopoulos is. So in relation to the George Stephanopoulos story out there, Disney's decision to settle the Trump defamation suit prompts a backlash at ABC. Just wanted to cover a little bit of this in tandem with the other story of looking like Stephanopoulos is leaving. This from the Wall Street Journal. Disney's decision to settle Trump's defamation suit was supposed to relieve the company of a major headache. Instead, it has set off an internal backlash. Many rank-and-file journalists and producers at ABC News are frustrated by the company's decision to resolve the suit rather than fight in court Trump's claims against the network and its anchor Stephanopoulos. ABC agreed to pay $15 million and $1 million in legal fees to Trump's lawyer. Disney chief executive Bob Iger approved the settlement, which was recommended by Disney's general counsel, Horacio Gutierrez, somebody you've heard us talk about before. According to people familiar with the matter, they settled it after a scheduled mediation. Stephanopoulos was set to be deposed this week. Now, again, realize that it's in evidence. The clips of Stephanopoulos saying something that was defamatory and demonstrably false 10 times. 10 times that he said this during that back and forth with, I believe it was Nancy Mace, Congresswoman Nancy Mace. There was no defending. What are you going to go to court over? He screwed up. He screwed the pooch. He lied. Or he got it wrong, either by incompetence or by malice. He was wrong. He stepped in it. There was nothing to fight. Disney knew it. Several ABC News staffers, you can imagine what they look like, okay, said it was concerning precedent for a media company and worry that the settlement sends a message that Disney is giving priority to its corporate interests and a relationship with the White House over its own journalists. Hold up. Let's take that paragraph in stride, shall we? I want you to really soak in the absolute ignorance, the freaking stupidity of what I just read. Several ABC News staffers, which means nobodies, said it was a concerning precedent for a media company and worry that the settlement sends a message that Disney is giving priority to its corporate interests. Let's skip the second part for a second. Its corporate interests over its own journalists. Yes, that's how it's supposed to work, you morons. Disney is a publicly traded company with public shareholders who are the ultimate authority when it comes to this company. They are the people that ultimately Disney does legally have to answer to. To make such a stupid statement like this, and again, I realize it's not a quote. This is the interpretation, the journalism of the Wall Street Journal, but there's what they are saying. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that this is what ABC News staffers are saying, that they are concerned of the precedent that their company is setting by putting the interests of the shareholders above the employees. What multiverse hellscape are we in? I would want to know who these staffers are, and I would want to have a sit-down meeting with them. You know, kind of like the bullying session that Lucasfilm was trying to force Gina Carano into at the same damn company. Like, these people don't get the fact that, no, idiot, we do answer to our shareholders. We do answer to our corporate interests first. Your job as some backwater newsroom staffer who is probably overpaid for a job that is largely unnecessary because God knows the advertisers aren't supporting ABC News broadcasts. We know that. It's a loss leader like most newsrooms are for major networks, ABC, CBS, NBC. Fox News may be one of the only 24-hour or news organizations anywhere that are actually generating a profit enough to run their operations. I'm not saying there aren't any others, but they are at the peak, I'm sure. ABC News is more than likely at the bottom of that totem pole. And these lunatics whose jobs aren't even justified by the value of the product that they produce are complaining that Disney is finally starting to put the interests of the business and the shareholders ahead of their fees. The story I told earlier when I told you guys, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, Rush Limbaugh talking about how newsrooms and news agencies and news staffers were pissed off when they were finding out that their budgets were being cut because there just wasn't any money in it. And this was 2 to 3 decades ago. Apparently, nobody's learned anything. Apparently, these same people have their heads so far up their butts, they probably think the sky is brown. Okay? You're not living in reality, and this is part of the problem with the modern corporate culture. It's basically what the news is. If this is ABC News staff, God save me, I can't even imagine what's going on at The View. It's really surprising and honestly perplexing that ABC decided to settle at this time and for this amount, said Sonia R. West, a law professor at the University of Georgia School of Law, adding that it seemed to her that the network had a strong defense. Quote, no one wants to send the message to potential future plaintiffs that defamation lawsuits against the press are likely to end with a big payday. Why not? Why not? A law professor at UGA is making this ridiculous claim. Why not? Valiant asks facetiously. We know why. Because people like her and people on the left absolutely, unequivocally believe that the press, which the left largely owns, should be held as gods. They should be held aloft for all to revere and no one to question. Their word is gospel in their mind. And the American people ought to be so lucky as to be able to have the opportunity to hear their sweet and sultry lies pushed into their ears every evening between 5 and 6 p.m. Eastern. Screw you. This is the problem. News organizations should be exempt from lawsuit, just like, what, the government? Because news organizations should be able to say whatever the hell they want, whether they're actually reporting the news or whether they're delivering complete lies, libel, slander. No, that's not how it works, pumpkin. That's not how any of this works. Just ask Rolling Stone magazine and the $10+ million they had to pay to a Virginia university about a decade ago for making up quote-unquote rape culture on campus. The whole thing turned out to be a complete fraud. Should they have been immune from lawsuits for the defamation that they delivered? But no, a law professor, a freaking law professor actually said these words. These words actually came out of her mouth. Yes, Pumpkin, if you defame, if you libel and slander, you're going to get sued. Freedom of the press does not mean that you get to do whatever the hell you want and lie. God, I'm sick of this. Y'all can see how pissed off I'm getting off with all this kind of stuff. And this is a bit of a cold read. I didn't go through this whole article earlier, but as I keep going through this is pissing me off. This is why I need X subscriptions, because I want to do so much more of this on X. If y'all think y'all seeing stuff here, wait till you see what I do on X. Stephanopoulos later went on the CBS Late Show with Stephen Colbert, another total winner, and reasserted his claim that, quote, was an appropriate word to use. So in other words, Stephanopoulos went out there and doubled down on his stupidity. Based on the comments made by the judge, quote, I'm not going to be cowed out of doing my job because of the threat. A Florida judge tossed ABC's motion to dismiss the suit in July, saying, quote, a reasonable jury could interpret Stephanopoulos' statements as defamatory. Good for those judges down there in Florida. At a press conference in Mar-a-Lago on Monday, Trump addressed concerns about the media and hinted at, quote, a few other defamation lawsuits in the works, including the one filed later that day against Gannett, the Des Moines Register, and pollster J. Ann Seltzer. The suit alleges violations of the Iowa Consumer Fraud Act, saying the defendants committed, quote, electoral interference by publishing an Iowa poll favorable to Vice President Kamala Harris right before the election. And again, I think if you all remember what he's talking about there, because our buddy Mark Mitchell from Rasmussen had been here many times, the completely fraudulent Ann Seltzer poll that was propagated out by MSNBC and everybody else out there, giant circle jerk on that one. They all got excited because Ann Seltzer, a giant fraudster, came out and said that Kamala Harris was ahead in Iowa by 3+ points. Trump wound up winning Iowa by like almost 10. There was never a question about Iowa, where it was going, but it was all about the con. It was all about the fraud that they were trying to perpetrate against the American people. And good for Trump. We should all be fed up with this at this point. Absolutely fed up with it. I hope they have fun with this. I truly, truly do. Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.